How are you?
Good. I love shoveling snow.
School tomorrow, maybe, depending on what they say. And then 9 inches of snow.
Yeah, you don't know what's gonna happen.
Nope.
You can just go to the south and let Chicago have it all.
Yeah.
And then it goes over to Detroit,
Detroit.
yeah, and then up to Buffalo.
That's where I'm going.
Yep.
Hi, how are you? So that's what I want. Not the first. Then they're starting to worry. You know. Good, how are you? Good. Stand down. Stand your head, you just better get on. Well, I don't think you have to go too far. 9 inches of snow is ridiculous. He says that with confidence. It's, you know what, no. The heavier, heavier snow is gonna be farther south.
I don't know what I got in.
I like your signs.
I got her down to 31.64.
Did you?
Yeah.
Easy to read.
Easy to read. Oh. Hey. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's for sure.
I've been through it for so long, I might have to leave home.
Well, yeah, no, he did. It was good. We got a pretty strong team. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Waukesha Plan Commission meeting on Friday, February 8th, beginning at 6:30 p.m. I call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Are there any volunteers that want to lead the Pledge of Allegiance? We have one.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you begin with the roll call?
Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Stigler.
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Here.
Supervisor Fisher.
Here.
Chairman Merrick.
Present. And Madam Clerk, have you met the opens meeting law?
Yes, we have.
And meeting minutes from November 9th, 14th, and 11th of January. Is there any objection to taking them all at once? Is there a motion? And a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to 6, site plan of operation and possible action. The petitioner is Adolfo Perez. Business is Milwaukee Installation Solutions. Location is W246 South 3244 Industrial Lane, Unit A. Tax key is WAKT 135-4965001. This is for a recommendation to the town board. Planner Malarkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The petitioner is requesting approval of a site plan of operation to locate a commercial insulation business, Milwaukee Installation Solutions, on the subject property. The business will occupy Unit A within the existing building. They're not asking for any site modifications or any signage at this time. If you recall, the Plan Commission Board also heard a petition from the same building last month from Midwest Pest Control. That was Unit B. The plan of operation for the business would be operating between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, with a maximum of 4 employees, or 4 employees currently, a maximum of 10 in the future. Company vehicles will be kept on site, 2 pickup trucks currently, with a maximum of 3 in the future. In terms of parking for employees, 2 administrative employees would park in the lot, 2 others as well, while all other employees would drive personal vehicles to job sites. So only 4 employee parking spaces would be required. Customer parking is not required because they wouldn't serve the general public at the location. The building itself would be used for the storage of, would be for office space, the storage of equipment and materials associated with the business itself. As I mentioned, there's no modifications to the site plan. In terms of parking, section 13-2-13 of the code requires 1 parking space for each employee during any 12-hour period. As I mentioned before, there'd be 2 administrative employees on site. 2 other employees may park their personal vehicles there, and then 3 pickup trucks would be there when not in use or not during business hours. So the petitioner in total for Unit A would utilize up to 7 parking spaces. Unit B utilizes up to 5 parking spaces per their approved site plan, leaving up to 16 spaces for the remaining Unit C on the property. There's also gravel area to the south of the asphalt paving area for any overflow parking. It's staff's opinion that there's sufficient parking on the site, meeting the requirements of the ordinance. As I mentioned, no signage is requested at this time, and the specific use is consistent with the I-1 zoning of the property. If the Plan Commission chooses to recommend approval request to the town board, staff has prepared a list of conditions, including the plan of operation and standard conditions.
Thank you. And is the petitioner here this evening? Good evening. Questions for the planner and/or the petitioner?
I just got one. You said about having 2 pickup trucks now and possibly a third. Now, will he have to come back and ask for the third? I mean, that's already going to be done. If we prove it this way, you can just have the third
Yeah,
one.
I was simply trying to describe how the business was going to grow or plan to grow. The actual plan of operation listed in the conditions lists 3.
Okay,
7
because that's what I'm after. If he wants 3, let's just do
Yeah,
3
and
right
that-
away
and
and
that-
cut to the chase here instead of,
Exactly. So the condition
Consult it next time.
states 3.
okay.
Excellent point. Thank you.
I have a question. Your blowing machine is, you're renting one or your truck?
Come on up to the microphone. Evening, Mr. Perez.
Good evening. We don't use like machines to blow in the insulation. We do more mechanical insulation. So it's a lot of more pipe covering and duct wrap.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. So you're in residential, but you're not
We
in a
strictly
framing
do,
structure. Would you insulate the framing structure?
we strictly do commercial work, and it's more like
Oh, okay.
new construction or additions or remodels.
Okay.
Other questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve,
In a
subject
second.
to our conditions.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. On to 7. And you'll be in front of the town board shortly then. Site plan of operation, discussion and possible action for Michael Steffen, Forward Lacrosse. The petitioner has asked that we table this to the next regular meeting of the Town Board and Plan Commission. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I got Mr. White first.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And at this time, it would be appropriate for me to step down.
We have a procedure that is outlined in our town ordinances that applies to town board meetings. I think it can equally be applied and has been to town plan commissions, and that's in the absence of the permanent town chairman or even temporarily with Chairman Merrick stepping down, we need to identify a temporary town chairman for the balance of the meeting. And that ordinance basically says the person who's longest served on the board basically conducts, if you will, a process to identify somebody to do that. So do we have any volunteers amongst the 4 of you remaining who would like to chair the rest of the meeting? Don't all speak at once. I guess.
I second the nomination.
All right, is there any discussion? We'll proceed to vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? And abstentions, aye. So the vote is 4-0 to 1. So we'll proceed with item number 8 on the Plan Commission meeting agenda. It's the land use plan amendment discussion and possible action. Petitioner John Merrick. The location is the north 20 acres of the east 1/4 of the northeast 1/4 of section 34 and the southeast 1/4 of the southeast 1/4 of section 27, township 6 north, range 19 east in the town of Waukesha. Tax key numbers are 2 WAKT 1404996 and WAKT 142999. There are 4 subparts to this agenda item. I'll just read them quickly and then we'll go from there. A is going to be the determination if application is complete. B, conceptually review request. C is determine that there is an urgency to quote fast track unquote. And D is set a joint public hearing for March 8, 2018. And I'm wondering if I might ask either Planner Malarkey, Attorney Macy, or both of you, if you might just kind of set the framework for what we're going to discuss, and then we'll get into the details of those each one by one. I think this might be just a little bit complicated, but can you kind of, either one or both of you, just kind of a little bit set the framework of what is before us tonight and what isn't? I think that'd be helpful.
Sure. So the staff report you have in front of you does provide an overview of what we're asking for. So this is sort of to get the ball rolling for a comprehensive plan amendment, or to consider a comprehensive plan amendment for the particular property. Along with the comprehensive plan amendment, there'd be a rezone, a plan unit development, conditional use, and a site plan of operation. The county also requires a comprehensive plan amendment. So what I guess the issue here is that in the town smart growth plan, there is a provision that requires comp plan amendments to be heard only once a year in September. And I was not aware of that provision. I'm not sure, it was not brought to my attention prior to the last meeting either. So what has to happen is the Plan Commission and the board have to agree that first, the comprehensive plan amendment application is complete, and that there's an urgency not to wait for the September meeting date. And I guess, so if that happens, the Plan Commission board can approve a fast track application for the amendment. They have to determine the application is complete. That would include a cover letter describing the amendment, the plat of survey, the detailed proposed development plans, and then any additional information that may be requested by the Plan Commission or the board. The petitioner has provided the required information for a complete application, and it was conceptually reviewed at the last Plan Commission and board meeting in January. So staff feels that the application is complete. Whether or not a fast track is warranted is up to the Plan Commission board. So what needs to be considered is this. Since the town hasn't made an amendment to their comprehensive plan in some time, I'm not exactly sure when the last time it was done. I've only been here a few months. I didn't consider the September meeting date in the original review of the proposal. We didn't discuss it at the last meeting as either. It was brought to the attention after the fact. The other thing is that I think the town envisioned with the September annual review of the comprehensive plan, it may have been anticipated when that provision was written that there would be multiple comprehensive plan amendments in a year, and it would be best to handle them all at once because it'd be simple to do. There'd be one public hearing or a series of public hearings on one night for the process, but they're pretty few and far between. So it's not like it's necessarily putting a wrench into the system or the normal meeting system by considering a comprehensive plan amendment in, say, February versus September. The other thing to consider is the county's current amendment review cycle. The county is currently reviewing their annual comprehensive plan amendments, and there's a deadline date of it's in April 12th. I believe it's April 12th. April 10th. That's the county board meeting. So what needs to happen is, because the county also has to do an amendment for this parcel, they need the town's recommendation on a comprehensive plan amendment prior to that time or concurrent with that date. So we sort of had to we had to backtrack a schedule, and Attorney Macy outlined a comprehensive schedule, including all the components of the process to happen to meet that particular deadline. So what the Plan Commission and board need to determine is again, A, is it complete? And B, is there a reason to fast track this particular proposal in light of that? So in this, I don't know how far you want me to get into the details here before you want to.
Maybe just a suggestion, again, I'm open to suggestions here, but maybe we should, that overview, let's see if we can deal directly with that first part, determination if the application is complete. Would that be a prudent thing to do, and see if we can get past that and then move on to the rest of it? Is that okay?
Certainly.
All right, I guess, and I'll pose this in terms of a way, or in terms of a question. I think you suggested it's complete, but I think you're looking for concurrence from the Plan Commission. The question that I would have in terms of the completeness of the application, I know on your staff review, you had, I think, 6 bullet points there, kind of additional information that have been asked of. There's something similar to it, I believe, in the minutes of the meeting. Does completeness include the submission of those items or not?
In my mind, the submission of those items were for the formal submittal. So the last meeting was the conceptual review, and a number of items, those 6 items that were asked, were for going forward. So we didn't anticipate this meeting at the last meeting in terms of needing to determine if the conceptual submittal was complete or not. So in my mind, those 6 items were meant for the actual formal submittal for the public hearing and so on. So at a conceptual level, I think there's definitely enough detail in the actual submittal to consider in a conceptual review framework.
So to go at it, I guess another way, and if I'm saying this wrong, tell me, we don't necessarily need to go through each of those 6 bullet points or the variations of those in the town minutes to agree that all of those things are in place to make a finding that the application is complete. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I believe that is correct. I think.
Mr. Chairman, let me read from the code.
Please.
That might be simple. Okay. And I don't know if you have in front of you, so I'm just going to cut to the quick. You have a very specific question, and I think the comprehensive plan answers that question. It says all amendments for any change in the text or map of the smart growth plan submitted by any person or agency other than the town board or the town plan commission shall include the applicant's name, address, daytime, phone number, email address, etc., and a letter format explaining the proposal to the town. Such petition shall be filed with the town clerk and shall be accompanied by an application fee as periodically determined by the town board, payable to the town to defray the cost of publication, investigation, professional services. The application shall pay a fee equal to the costs, and it goes on to say. So I think data required. In addition to the information required on an amendment cover letter, the applicant shall supply the following: a plat of survey or scale drawing drawn to a scale of not less than 200 feet to an inch, showing the land in question, its location, the length and direction of each boundary thereof, the location, existing use of the buildings on such land, and the principal use of all properties within 300 feet of such land. The number of copies shall be a minimum of 13 or as determined by the town board. Name and address of the owners of all properties within 300 feet of any part of the land included in the proposed change. When a petition for change of land uses, determination of lands in the town of Waukesha is filed requesting a change of land use to a classification other than single-family residential, conservancy, or agricultural, the applicant shall submit 13 copies of the detailed proposed development plan for the lands involved. Such development plans shall show the footprint, size, and location of the buildings to be constructed with reference to each other, with reference to the boundary lines of the land involved, the nature, type of business or industry to be conducted in such premises and within the building or buildings proposed to be constructed thereon, roadways and driveways to be constructed, parking areas to be private, public highways or highways adjacent to the lands involved, preliminary drainage facility provided, and any other further information may be requested by the town plan commissioner, town board to facilitate the decision process. That's the specific language of the code. And then we go on to the procedure, which we'll get to on other parts of this.
Okay.
But I want to be very specific because the document is very specific.
Okay, fine. So, I mean, cut to the chase on that part of it. Is it staff's finding or recommendation that in fact the application is complete?
Yes, that is my recommendation. However, the Plan Commission can request additional information if they feel it prudent to do so.
Okay. Are you looking for the Plan Commission to make a formal recommendation then on item 8A?
Correct.
Okay. Does everybody understand where we're at or questions? Many of the commissioners?
And you're correct, Mr. Chairman, the sentence we're dealing with now says, if the Plan Commission and Town Board agree that the application for an amendment is complete. And then it goes on about the urgency, but I'm going to stop right there because there's a
Sure.
sentence that says both the Plan Commission and Town Board have to find the application complete. That's why we're crossing our Ts and dotting our Is to make sure all of the procedures are followed.
So we, as a Plan Commission, we need to make a finding and an affirmative recommendation to the Town Board. The application is complete. Otherwise, we're finished at this point in time, right? I mean, that's the essence of it. So, questions? Is there a second to the motion? Okay, motion has been made and seconded that our finding is that the application is complete, and we make that recommendation to the Town Board. Further discussion or questions? I'm assuming the petitioner chooses not to speak on that issue at this moment. Is that a fair assumption? Okay. If there's nothing further, we'll proceed to vote. I'm assuming everybody understands the motion. That is that we find the application to be complete and recommend as such to the Town Board. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes 5-0. So then we can go to part B, which is conceptual review of the request.
So I'm contending that conceptual review of the request already happened at the January meeting. I would just like the Plan Commission to reaffirm that satisfies the requirement to determine for conceptual review.
Okay, I guess the only question that I would have, and I'll beg back against it one more time, but there was request for additional information, which you outlined and everything. Do we need to discuss that, or have you run through that to see whether or not that additional information is in place, or you don't believe we need to do that at
That
this
additional
time?
information is not all in place yet. And as I alluded before, that would be required when the final formal submittal happens going forward for public hearing, for the comp plan change, for the rezoning, et cetera. So there's a number of, so the purpose of the conceptual review of the PUD in the first place was one, to determine if it was complete and everything there was enough to kind of get a sense of what the development was about. And then to ask questions for additional information to be provided with the formal submittal. Plan Commission and Board were sort of, didn't make a finding as to whether they supported the application or not, but more along the lines of, is there more we want to see going forward as this progresses further and we formally review it? So while there are some outstanding issues yet and some other pieces of information we're still waiting for, I don't think on a conceptual level, they're necessarily needed at this point.
Okay, so then are we disposing of that item here tonight simply by indicating and putting back into the record that conceptual review was in fact done at the prior meeting on January 11th? Is that correct, or what was the date?
Correct.
So we don't need to act any further on that. It's simply a recognition or affirmation that we've been there and done that. Is
I
that
think so.
correct? Okay. So
I think I would want to have you make a motion. You've seen more documents, I think, this time. I think the packet is not the same packet. I think it's a lot larger. So this would certainly give you an opportunity, and it probably
Okay.
would be better to acknowledge that the conceptual review occurred and that
Additional information.
you feel that it's met the satisfies the requirement.
okay, so then you're suggesting we should take formal action on the fact that we did look at this January 11th. Additional information has been provided since then, and we find it complete at this point in time. Is that the essence of action we're looking for?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody like to make that motion?
I'd like to make the motion. I don't know if I have to use your exact verbiage.
No, you don't. You can use your own.
Well, you sounded much better.
Maybe Attorney Macy wants to put that into words for the clerk.
That's good.
I think that'd be a good idea.
I think, do you have it? Or do you want me to word it? Oh, no, if you've already taken it down, you can read it. I don't know if you've written it down. I don't want to. Okay, well, it would be just a motion to acknowledge that conceptual review occurred on January 11, 2018. Additional documentation was submitted, and the Plan Commission finds that the requirements of the conceptual review have been satisfied.
It's exactly what I heard Commissioner Flanagan say. Was there a second to that, or did we not get that far? Okay, seconded by Commissioner Ramirez. Assuming everybody understands the motion, is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that passes 5-0. So then we're on to item C, and we started to wander into that a bit, and maybe you want to dig a bit deeper onto that, Planner Malarkey or Attorney Macy, but it's the determination whether there is an urgency to quote fast track unquote.
Correct. And that's about the extent of the language in the plan itself. And my original point was, one, I was not aware of the September submittal date requirements. I'm not sure who else was, but it wasn't brought to my attention last month when we started the process. So that's part of it. We weren't thinking about it. That's the second point I made, was that the plan amendments are few and far between in the town of Waukesha. I don't know when the last one was made. It's not like considering this at this point in time is going to be a burden on the town. There aren't multiple applications that have to be consolidated at one time per year. And the third point was, in order to meet the county's comprehensive plan schedule, which also needs to happen with this particular parcel, their county meeting is April 10th. In order to have a recommendation on this or make a decision by that point in time, we would need to fast track this and get this moving now. Because if it waits till September, it may be another year plus before the county would have this on their review schedule. So I offer that as something to consider, and the Plan Commission should make the determination themselves whether there is an urgency here.
I can shed some light on the background. I don't know, are any of the sitting commissioners or yourself, did you sit on the original comp plan drafting committee?
Is that, and I'm harkening back to a date on that, was that 2009 or does it predate that?
2009.
Okay, then I'm going to tell you I was likely here. If that answers
Well,
your question, yes.
The reason I ask is because there was a procedure, there was a grant received by the state of Wisconsin by Waukesha County, and a number of communities joined in that grant. That's how the county got the grant. And what they did is, as a group, and I don't know if you were a member or not, many of my clients were, and I wasn't here, so I can't speak to whether you were, and I thought maybe somebody on the board might be able to answer that. But the procedure was that they, as a group, worked on the county comp plan, and out of the county comp plans came the other plans. Okay, they all sort of worked on them together, because all comp plans have 7 or 9, don't quote me, maybe Sean remembers, things they have to deal with pursuant to the state statute. Okay. In those discussions on point to this issue, the county decided they were going to do a review process starting in like December. I think your application had to be in by the end of the year. Don't hold me to that. And then they would, during the early part of the next calendar year, they would work on all the county amendments. That was a policy decision. They made a recommendation to all the communities that, as your document says, the town has decided to go through an annual comprehensive plan review process to see if amendments are required, and they're schedule a time at a September Plan Commission and town board meeting each year when amendments can be proposed by citizens and developers. That was deliberate to say two things. One is you're supposed to do it, have an annual look-see, but secondly, that they wanted you done by December 31st. Okay, that was very deliberate for all of those communities, and that's why I'm presupposing, but whether you were part of the group or not, you picked up on that issue. Okay. And early on, the county was very strict. They would only review the comp plan once a year. Okay. That has changed, especially with County Exec Farrow. He has indicated that he feels that's unreasonable. There were a few other instances. I know one in particular for a subdivision out in town and city of Delafield that they didn't make them wait the whole year. And so there were limited exceptions. There probably are more exceptions now under County Exec Farrow because he's indicated that he thinks that's better policy, and that's publicly known. Your group had the foresight, and I don't know how many of the codes have that. It says if the Plan Commission and Town Board agree the application for an amendment is complete and there is an urgency not to wait for the September meeting date, the Plan Commission can recommend and the Town Board can approve to, quote, fast track an application for a comprehensive amendment. So that's it. As your planner has indicated, we don't have a lot of guidance. I know why it's there. I know what was intended by the September date and the fast track date, but that's the specific language that you have in your document on this topic.
Help me out here a bit, or help us out. A comprehensive plan, land use plan, master land use plan, smart growth plan, that type of thing. Can you help sort out if some of those things are synonymous or differentiate between them? I think that would help me, and maybe it might help others as well.
Well, of the four you quoted, three of them are synonymous: the land use plan, the comp plan, and the smart growth plan. To the best of my knowledge and my education, those are the same thing. I think the state statute is actually the comprehensive plan. This master plan, ironically, was the old law, and that's in 6223 sub 5. Don't hold me to, but I think it is 3 or 5. And that is the master plan of a local community, and that is strictly done by the Plan Commission. And they never repealed that law. That law is still on the books, but everybody follows the comprehensive plan. And that's why when they wrote the comprehensive plan, the Plan Commission still played such a key role in the processes of the comprehensive plan. And they actually need approval of both bodies to amend it. And I believe that's in large part by doing a lot of legislative study, is they acknowledge that it used to be only the Plan Commission, and they didn't want to cut the Plan Commission out of the process. So the Plan Commission is a key participant in a master plan, comp plan, smart growth, land use plan amendment process.
I'm going to try to help out here a little bit and invite a couple of other people in and running on recollection here that might not be great, but if indeed that was 2009, I believe at that point in time, there's 4 other people in this room who were distinguished public servants at that point in time were on the Plan Commission, and they were going to look at me, but I think Commissioner Flanagan, Commissioner White, and I know in the audience, Ms. Van Sock, our former town chairwoman, and I believe Chief Buchholz. I may be wrong, but I believe all 5 of us were on the Plan Commission, and you can certainly correct me momentarily here. I recall we went through, and I think there were even some state guidelines and that type of thing. I believe we all participated as members of the Plan Commission in that discussion at that point in time. And if I'm off base or have a wrong recollection, help me out, but that's my belief. I see some nodding of heads. Does that sound right? So you've got 5 of the people who were all Plan Commissioner members at that point in time. I don't believe any of the people who would have been 3 town board members at that point in time are in the room. Did that help at all, Attorney Macy?
Sure, it did. No one's indicated apparently that what I know of happening at the county level and at the other community level was not happening at your community also.
The only other thing I tell you, and again, this is my recollection, I recollect an awareness of the fact that for a number of years, the county basically said, we're doing this once a year and we're doing it in January. So basically work to our schedule to get it done because we're doing it in January and that's it. That's my recollection. I guess if somebody has a different thought. And I think we did, I don't remember specifically what projects or developments there were, but I think that that issue of the timing on that came into play more than once. So, I mean, that's the background information. I guess we move forward from there. Planner Malarkey, you, and I know you've got a staff review here. You and Attorney Macy laid out some timeline scenarios. Might it be instructive for you to kind of go through those?
Sure. So it's organized by date, and Attorney Macy was the one that outlaid this. I just incorporated into my staff report. So thank you, Attorney Macy. So tonight's February 8th, the Town Plan Commission determines the application complete, conceptual review, which is already done, determined a fast track. Tonight also would have to be setting the joint Plan Commission and board hearing, which requires a Class 2 notice based on our comprehensive plan for a plan amendment for the date of March 8th. That could be that could also be pushed back if you felt that it should happen later. Same thing would have to happen. Set a public hearing, Class 2 notice or Class 2 date for the rezoning for March 8th, and then also a joint Plan Commission and Board public hearing, Class 2 notice for the PUD conditional use for March 8th. So those are all the things that the Plan Commission needs to do tonight. The Town Board has some of those same steps, but also a couple more. The Town Board would also have to take a look at our recently adopted public participation plan to make sure that the steps are being followed and that all procedures are being followed. Would also have to set a public hearing per the state statutes. So in addition to the Class 2 notices and the joint public hearings with the Plan Commission, the Town Board will have to set a public hearing for March 9th, which is a Class 1 30-day notice. That would have to be in the paper by March 9th. And then following that, on March 8th is when the public hearings would actually begin, the joint public hearings for the plan amendment, the rezoning, the PUD conditional use, and so on. So again, this is all working backwards for the April 10th meeting at the county board. The town board would also hold a special meeting on April 9th where the actual public hearing for the plan amendment would be held per the state statutes. This would be a second public hearing, adopting the ordinance approving the plan amendment at that meeting, notifying the county of the plan amendment, and then recommending the amendment to the county comprehensive development plan for the board meeting on April 10th. So working backwards from that date. So as I mentioned, the Plan Commission has, in addition to determining the fast track, would also have to set the public hearing notices for the plan amendment, for the rezoning, and the PUD conditional use. But I think the first step, again, is whether or not this deserves the fast track, and there's some urgency to this.
Okay, discussion, questions?
Well, my question is, why wouldn't we fast track it? I guess he's just described all the things that we have to go through, no matter, regardless. Why wouldn't we fast track it?
Anyone else? Commissioner White?
Sure. I don't mind the fast track, but it seems to me, and if we can do it, get all this, we went through a lot of stuff. I mean, if we can get all this stuff done, maybe we can, maybe we can't. I ain't guaranteeing anything. Get all this stuff, information collaborated together and be able to make a recommendation one way or the other way. I think we need to, if everybody agrees that we think we can get all this stuff done.
Okay. Anyone else?
I don't have a problem with the fast track one way or another. I don't think it matters. But like Al says, there's an awful lot of stuff here to get done, and it won't matter. It could be, never get approved anyway. So I mean, if we're gonna do it, I guess this is gonna take an awful lot of, there's a lot of things in here that have to be done. We got a public hearing, we're gonna need a public opinion on it. But as far as a fast track, I can support the fast track.
Well, I have the same question. I guess, what do we gain by not having the fast track? We don't. Those same obligations are in front of us no matter what. So why not fast track it?
I mean, if we don't get it done, what happens then? They go past or it goes back to the normal county board time frame.
Already know it's gonna be up to the 12th. Is that the change?
Yeah, we talked about
The county has said when they're gonna take that. Since putting, okay, first, this chart was put together at the request of the petitioner, which we always do for every petitioner, okay? They come in and they say, this is the timetable I would like to have you try to do. And they paid all the costs to do all of this research, because we haven't even started to go through all the documents yet. I've just been highlighting certain parts of them. So I just want everybody to know, no one is saying, first, that you have to do it under this timetable, and no one's saying that you might not get to one of the 4 public hearings that need to be held and adjourn that public hearing another month or 2 weeks. That'll be your prerogative with any petition that comes in. So I think all of your comments are well taken. This is just a schedule that you can either agree to or not agree to. And there is no guarantee that any of these will be done on the nights that they're said to be done, okay? We have been told since the schedule was put together that the special town board meeting is not needed, that it can be at your regular meeting on April 12th, is what I've been told by the clerk. And if the petitioner wishes to speak to that, they can, Okay. Do we know, the question that's been asked is, do we know whether the county has a drop dead date on the comp plan? As to when they have to have it, or are they taking it up when we get it to them? So if it wasn't done on the 12th for some reason, is that a drop dead date for the county?
I can address
You gotta
that.
give
It's
your name and address.
John Merrick, W221, South 1487, Overlook Trail, Waukesha, Wisconsin. The drop dead date is more along the lines of whether or not the school is going to hold the property, the school district is going to hold the property without a closing on it. And their drop dead date was the 30th of April, and they've given me 30 days beyond that. So if it doesn't get done by then it doesn't get done.
But the specific question was, did the county, they gave you a drop dead date originally, because I put the schedule together based on a county drop dead date of April 10th. Did they give you a new drop dead date?
The following meeting is when they would take it up, the regular meeting of the county board.
So to assure everyone here, this schedule was not put together to say you have to make decisions per this schedule. This is just a schedule at the request of the petitioner, as they've indicated, and every petitioner who comes in here asks you to do it under a certain schedule. I mean, that's typical. I mean, you may not know that because it may be only the staff who puts the schedule together and puts it in front of you. And no one's saying this isn't a lot when you'd have to have a county comp plan amendment, a town comp plan amendment, a rezoning, and a PUD-CU. That's a lot. Now, I have seen that more and more recently. I probably had at least 4. I don't know how many our planners had or our engineers had, where it's been the same thing. And you're going to see the same dog and pony show each time for the most part, which is fine. And that's what it has to be. But there will be 4 opportunities. The law only requires 3, but your comp plan requires an extra public hearing for a joint public hearing under the comp plan for the Plan Commission and the town board. The Plan Commission is not required under the state law to have a public hearing, but your plan is, and nobody probably realized that either because we haven't had one for quite a while. So there will be plenty of opportunity, and like any public hearing, if you don't have the information you need and you don't have it, we set the public hearing over. And that's your prerogative, and that's what you're required to do. So I don't want anyone to think that this schedule was put together to hold your feet to a fire or anything. Does that answer your question? Does that, so we'll take them one step at a time.
I have a question. I guess it's kind of a big picture question. My concern, or as I'm looking to be satisfied if we fast track this or accelerate it, and I understand all of the good reasons for doing that in terms of working with the county and so forth, but the whole issue, this public participation procedure, I mean, we took that up because we're obliged to do it. I'm just looking at some of the words in there about us adopting written procedures designed to foster public participation, including open discussion, communication programs, information services, public meetings, and so forth, with advance notice has been provided every stage of the preparation and amendment of a comprehensive plan and so forth. Do we at all, with fast tracking or an accelerated schedule, are we in, can an argument be made in any way that we are shortcutting or shortchanging opportunities for public participation in the project? That's a kind of a big question. I don't know whether there's a way to help with that or not. That would be my concern, because this, with any other development of the size or consequence, I think we absolutely need robust opportunities for robust public participation.
Well, that's in one small part, that's, I don't know answer, but under the law, you adopted a public participation plan at the January 25th town board meeting, correct? And that plan directs the staff how to get notice, and we have plenty of time under the plan you adopted to give the appropriate public participation notices as required by the plan you adopted. We wouldn't, you know, the plan, the state statute has general information, the comp plan has general information. You have to adopt a specific plan, and you did so. And I will defer to the clerk. She knows what she has to do, and she's going to make sure we have plenty of time to do it, if that's your question.
That's in essence the question. Somebody cannot advance an argument or what or not that we're shortcutting the public participation procedure. We should be able to accomplish all of that.
No, because keep in mind, most of the applications, even under the old processes of no fast track, come in September and have to be done, you know, September, October, you know, November time. So we started this in January and we're going to be done in April. So we have the same similar time frame outlined in this proposal that one that started in September would have also.
Okay, appreciate that.
I guess I would add one thing if I could. The public participation plan outlines a standard schedule for public involvement, public hearings, and so on, but it does allow more flexibility as well. If the plan commissioner board felt they could require additional public meetings if they thought it was important outside of the extra public hearings. So as mentioned previously, the town of Waukesha has the statute public hearing with a 30-day notice. But in addition to that, you already have the baked in joint plan commission and board hearing as well. So you already have two public hearings. There was a conceptual review last month that's being discussed informatively tonight. On top of that, if you wanted to, you could add an additional public information meeting as well.
Other questions or comments? And I guess I would ask, maybe we just revisit one more time, just for the sake of discussion, assume that the recommendation comes out of the plan commission here, that there is an urgency to fast track, and there's an affirmative response to that. And I don't want to get ahead onto D because I know that I'm talking about a joint public hearing, but there's more than one option then for scheduling meeting dates, even if we make that determination. Can you just revisit that one more time, please?
So the critical date is for the comprehensive plan amendment. So that public hearing is the critical one. But the public hearing for the rezoning and the public hearing for the PUD conditional use are less time intent. You know, and it doesn't matter as much when those are scheduled. It makes sense logistically to handle them at the same time. You're discussing them at the same time. to hold the public hearing in the same night. But if the Plan Commission and Board felt like that was too much, too fast, those two public hearings for the rezone and the conditional use could be delayed by a month if you choose to do that.
Okay, and I guess just my follow-up question, if, and we're not at that thing yet, but if we were to try to do these joint, the hearings are going on March 8th. Isn't that kind of the reverse of what one would ordinarily think, that you ought to do that planning step first? I maybe didn't say that very artfully, but you know what I'm saying? I mean,
To consider the compound amendment before considering the rezoning
Yeah.
and the conditional use?
in normal circumstances, would that not intuitively make more sense?
I guess on paper it does, but as Attorney Macy mentioned before, it's not uncommon at all to see the comp plan, the rezoning, and a conditional use potentially all at once, because you're discussing the same issues
I
at
understand.
the same time.
Okay. Right.
It can be argued that you're doing a service to the citizens, not making them come back to 4 or 5 months of different public hearings, but everybody
Understood.
does it differently.
Yeah,
But,
understood.
You know,
Okay, we need to move along then on item 8C. Further discussions, or have you heard enough that you're prepared to make a recommendation one way or the other?
I make a motion that we vote the fast track.
and may I indicate the wording of your thing says the Plan Commission recommends that the town board approve the application for fast track.
Okay, that's acceptable to the maker of the motion, I
It's
presume?
acceptable.
Very good. And to the seconder? Okay, everybody understands what the motion is. Any other further discussion? If not, are you prepared to vote? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that motion passes 5-0. Then we've got to deal with item 8D, which is on the agenda, set a joint public hearing for March 8th, 2018, and maybe once more, Sean, just run through what elements of the public hearing would be if we were to act on that as the way it's agendized.
So there would be a joint Plan Commission and Board public hearing for the comprehensive plan amendment on March 8th. And then also be a joint public hearing for the rezoning for the property from A1 to R2 for March 8th. And then a joint public hearing for the PUD conditional use consideration also for March 8th.
Okay, and a possible alternative to that would be to do the first component of that on March 8th and the others downstream on what date?
Well, the next meeting after that would be April 12th. So that would be a possibility as well.
Okay. I guess, and we'll certainly let others speak to it, or the petitioner, that frankly, with all there is to do here, that would actually be my preference. The latter would be to do the first element of that on March 8th and the rest on the meeting in April, but we'll certainly let others speak to that. If the petitioner may want to respond, just offer that as a suggestion. Who would like to speak? Mr. Stigler?
I guess I kind of like to see it all done at one time too. I mean, if you can drag people to two different meetings for the same issues, it's not real user friendly. If somebody's got a better idea, they had to drag it out for the next meeting, I guess I'm willing to listen to it, but I guess we can clean this all up in one night and be done with it instead of dragging this thing out for months, I guess.
So your preference would be to do it all on March 8th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
I would just add that April 12th there's still going to be another public hearing for the amendment on April 12th as well. So the joint hearings with the Plan Commission and Board on March 8th, those are the hearings that are outlined in the Smart Growth Plan for the town. Those are meetings that aren't required by state statutes. Those are above and beyond for the town. On April 12th, the board is going to hold a public hearing for the required statute that requires that. So you're going to be talking about it again at the April 12th meeting. So you're going to have a public hearing on the plan at either date, either March or April. So you're going to have the same kind of a thing at both meetings regardless.
But I want to add to that, and you're going to make this decision. It's a policy decision. I sort of envision that you're going to have the major public hearings on March 8th, but that in all likelihood, especially for the PUDCU, you would be tabling that and directing staff to come back in April for the decision. So you're really, and that's your decision, you know, they filed in January. If you decide to hold the public hearing in April and not make it, and then adjourn the public hearing, you won't be making a decision until June.
So that makes some sense. So the hearing is held. We could act that night, or the decision on that could be deferred.
And I think with Merrill Hills, we
sense.
closed the public hearing and directed this, no, we may have continued the public hearing. Did we close it or we closed it? But you directed staff to come back with the PUD language addressing certain issues and adding certain conditions. And so that's not uncommon. It's not that you can't act in April, but I think you all know me well enough to know I think there are reasons sometimes to have a breather between the public hearing. And so I want to be very clear, you would hold the hearing on March 8th, and assuming on the comp plan, you have to adopt a resolution. And the town board can't hold their public hearing for 30 days after you adopt a resolution. So all the action that we would be asking you to consider taking on March 8th, although you could take action on the rezoning and the PUD, but rezoning is not as tough for Sean and I to write, but the PUD sometimes can be a little more difficult. And so we envisioned you would hold the major public hearing that the citizens would come in on March 8th on all three items, 3 separate public hearings, but maybe one dog and pony show incorporating it into the other 2. And then you would adopt the resolution if you were of a mind to do so, and you were ready. You may not be. And then the town board can continue with the state statute process of the second public hearing, the 30-day notice and everything. And then you would give the staff direction as to whether you're ready to act at the rezoning and the PUD that night, or whether you'd be acting at the April 12th meeting. Does that make sense?
I think that makes a lot of common sense. Does everybody understand what Attorney Macy was outlining?
I got a question for Attorney Macy. You know, there was this recent legislative action done on PUDs for town boards to, well, they can't act, they have to adopt. Is that going to come into play on this, or
Yes.
how's that going to affect all this?
Our PUD is a CU, and it's not atypical. I don't want to use the word atypical. It's not a typical CU. So there is a lot of criterion, I believe, in most PUD ordinances. I'm not as familiar with it. Maybe the planner can speak to it. If you have a conditional use that says dog boarding, there's no criterion at all. So how they're going to have substantial evidence, and you're going to have to approve it with conditions because we don't have anything. We have a lot of criterion that have to be satisfied and things to look to issue a PUD. So the answer to your question is yes, you're going to have to follow the new law. And if you don't have substantial evidence to deny, you will have to approve. But there are factors, I believe, in the PUD ordinance that they have to show the substantial evidence that they satisfy. Unlike the other conditional uses scare us much more than the PUD conditional uses. Is that
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So there are things he has to satisfy to get that right to get the PUD. But if he satisfies them, the petitioner, he has an absolute right under the new property owner's bill of rights to get a CU. You're absolutely right.
So as we can continue the discussion, is someone comfortable with making a motion to set the date for the joint public hearings? And in fact, they would be 3 of them in succession, would they, if we were to do that? And to set that date for March 8th, 2018? Is that correctly suggested?
Your clerk, at the staff meeting, she brought this up and she's asked me to bring it up. Now, your past practice has not been to set the dates for rezoning and PUD. That's been staff directed. We've never come to you. I have 2 communities that do it that way, that the staff is not allowed to set a public hearing until it comes to you and you approve it. but she just wants to remind you that the one that, and actually, to be perfectly honest with you, it says, following the conceptual review, the plan commission, by the plan commission, the town clerk shall schedule a public hearing to held be jointly by the town plan commission and the town board, publication of a class 2 notice. But we thought it best, because of the totality of the circumstances, to bring everything to you and to let you say, yes, we want to hold the joint, we're willing to hold the joint hearing on March 8th.
Okay, so let's just, for the minutes so we can move along, let's just assume the group is prepared to make that recommendation. Would you word a motion for us then that appropriately takes into the way it's agendized and what staff should be doing and the ordinance and so forth, please?
Plan commission recommends to the town clerk to set the joint public hearing on the comp plan pursuant to the town procedures for March 8th.
I make that motion.
Very good, Mr. Flanagan. That's exactly what I heard you say. Somebody going to second that? Motion was made by Commissioner Flanagan, seconded by Commissioner Stigler. Further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 5-0. Are we, anything else out of the petition or whatever? I'm assuming we're finished with that agenda item. And you can come back and resume, or you want me to adjourn us? It's a tough thing to do. Move to adjourn by Commissioner Stigler, second by Commissioner Flanagan. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0 as well. Is it your pleasure to take a 5-minute break, or you want to keep going, or what, Mr. Chairman? Okay, we'll take 5 minutes and resume. Thank you.
So you want to, we should